Louder.
The one in Paramus.
In Paramus.
Reaction and response.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so you have an idea what the topic is. So give a little background. Prabhupada would sometimes speak of Krishna consciousness will be successful by Krishna consciousness will be successful by cultural conquest. I'm especially paying attention to you two. You're one of the two. Because I know that they know these things. So, Krishna consciousness will be successful, spread all over the world by cultural conquest. Have you heard that before? You're hearing it. So when he said cultural conquest, it's not that he meant by Bharatanatyam dancing and tabla playing and Vedic architecture, because that's part of culture, is architecture. Although those are elements to Vedic culture. But at least my understanding is cultural conquest was this one, and spiritual culture and its values. So there are some people in this world, they call themselves, or they're called cultural engineers. Have you heard that term before? In corporate world? So supposing there's a corporate takeover, or that some company sells out to another company, merges with another company or something. And one of the first things they want to do so they look at the culture of that corporation and they analyze and they want to transform the culture of the corporation. So those are cultural engineers, like a mechanical engineer and civil engineer and electrical engineer. These are cultural engineer folks. Or organization, a group of people like the Hare Krishna organization, or an individual. The culture of an individual can be looked at in these terms. And there's different metaphors or images that are used. This is one of them. The image of an iceberg. So, if they didn't know, they should have known. The Titanic folks, the tip of the iceberg is just the tip of the iceberg, and there's a big part of the iceberg beneath what's above the surface of the water. That's an iceberg, it's the whole thing. So the iceberg of culture has at the top things that are measurable, observable, behaviors, norms of a culture. How people dress, how people speak, how people conduct their affairs, the external, measurable, observable things. That's the tip of the iceberg of culture. And then below the surface of the water, that part of the iceberg, it's much bigger, it's the values of a person or group of persons, like say, for an organization, their mission statement. Or for ISKCON, it's the 7 purposes. You familiar with 7 purposes? 1966, when Srila Prabhupada incorporated ISKCON, according to the laws of the state of New York, you have to give purposes for your organization so they can verify, does it belong in this category, that category, the other category? So he gave 7 purposes. That's like a mission statement. That's the values of this organization are. Or you might do it for yourself. Like, goals, short-term, long-term, lifelong goals. Your mission, life mission. So, and it's explicit. It's something you hold as something that's important to you. What we say is important to you. That's your values. Now, behaviors can influence values, and values drive behaviors. One of the reasons of behavior change, like, back there's some rules here. You can't hit, you can't swear at. There are certain behaviors in this gym that are just not okay. So that's behavior rules. And if one consistently observes certain behaviors, it may affect their value, like be kind instead of hitting or something, So values drive behaviors, and behaviors affect values, and there's an interchange between the two. This is the iceberg of culture. And then there's this bottom part of the iceberg that it's even below, what's just below the surface of the water. And the iceberg of culture is implicit convictions, unchanging realities, things that aren't dependent upon time, place, and circumstance. Because in the course of one's life, one's values can change, and one's behaviors can change. But there's some things of life that just don't change. Okay? Some things in life don't change, like we're spirit soul. Values might change, but that doesn't change. And behaviors, so. And then, what do spirit souls do? Spirit souls engage in service. Those that hear Srila Prabhupada's teachings, that's something that we learn. It's intrinsic to every living being. We render service to someone. So we can go on. It's unchanging, certain given realities of life. If it's really important, continue using your text message little machine there, but if it's not really urgent, put it away because it's distracting. Thanks. So the first slide was this one, spiritual culture. Oops, spiritual culture. So now we're looking at the iceberg of culture, and there's three parts. And we're going to focus on stated values, the values of Bhagavad Gita, recognizing that values drive behaviors, but those values also need to be in alignment with the unchanging realities of life. Like we're spirit soul. We're meant for serving Krishna. And so you align values and behaviors with the bottom of the iceberg of culture. That's what this topic is about. And for those of you that weren't there for the introduction part that we did last week, there's a group of devotees who work closely with faculty members of Oxford University in England to take the message of Bhagavad Gita that they teach at Oxford to a public level, so people that aren't so cerebral, they can just understand Gita's message in simple terms. So they came up with 6 values. There's more than 6, but was meant to distill and synthesize Bhagavad Gita's message for the general public. So that's what we're doing. We're going through those Gita values, and wanted to share that it's not just information, so it's a request, as you hear. The education system of today is oriented towards information, like heavily weighted on information. You're all from Indian background, so I'll share this with you. 7, 8 years ago or so, in India, there was an education conference held in Delhi, and it was for college graduate and undergraduate and high school and below high school, whatever that is. So it was, educators from different age levels. And the keynote speaker, I wasn't there, but I was told by people who were there, who are educators, said education in India today can be summarized in 5 words. Information, 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 no transformation. And we're failing, because real education is meant to transform, build character. And then if you have character, you place information on top of character and you have something useful. But if you don't have character and you just give people information, they can do bad things. And people do bad things with information technology, without detailing, you all are aware. But real education is meant for not just information, but development of character, or the distinction between information and wisdom. One reference about wisdom or knowledge, it's not just what you know, it's what your qualities are. For just as one example, I'll give 2. One example is in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13. The beginning of chapter 13, Arjuna asks 6 questions, and they're in pairs of 2, so 3 sets of 2s make 6. And he wants to know what's knowledge and the object of knowledge. Jnanam and Gayam. So that's 2 of the 6. And when Krishna says what's knowledge, he gives a long list. And if you look closely at the long list, it's qualities. Amanitvam adambitvam. It's freedom from pride and humility. That's where it starts on the list. Those are qualities, but one who has knowledge has character and quality. One who has information without character isn't humble and free from pride. So the purpose of this exercise and the purpose of Bhagavad Gita and its values is the wisdom side, not the information side. So please try to listen with that ear. When you read Bhagavad Gita, it's Krishna's words, Krishna's sound vibration to help you go from, like Arjuna, bewildered or uncertain about duty, to clarity. But not just information. Now I know whether to turn left or right. Your GPS can tell you whether to turn left or right, but your GPS can't build character or transform the heart. Technology can do that. Bhagavad Gita can transform the heart. That's the purpose. So one other important piece here is, when we look at the values of those who have wisdom, it can look really high, like out of our reach. So this is an illustration that comes from people that do cultural engineering. Back to, our organization is over here on the left and we want to go over there to the right. And there's a big gap between where our organization is, our corporation or group of people or whatever. So that big gap in social, cultural, organizational people, it's called liminal space. And there's a limin. Here's the gymnasium, and outside is the hallway. And there's a little strip between the gymnasium and the hallway, and in carpentry terms that's called a limin. Limen is a Latin word that means a juncture between this and that. Another, in an architectural term, if you have, this is an architect, I just studied this because it's social engineering or cultural engineering. So there's the outdoors and here's the indoors, and sometimes there's a liminal space. It's a porch or a patio, or it's not really outdoors, it's not really indoors yet. It's a liminal space, something between this and that. That's this word limen means. There are books written on it in terms of social change. When an individual, let's say teenage life, a couple of people in the area of teenage life, it's a transformation from being a child to being an adult, and that's that in-between space. And there's lots of turbulence in that in-between space, commonly. I mean, there may be exceptions, but commonly it's turbulent. But it's not just teenage life is turbulence. When you're going from one thing to another thing, that in-between space, that liminal space, is uncomfortable. The books written about it say, embrace your discomfort, because it means you're making progress. It's uncomfortable to be uncomfortable. Embrace it. Enjoy it. It's part of becoming a new something. And some people don't want it. They don't like that discomfort, so they just stay in their comfort zone. And they don't change. They're afraid of experiencing beyond their comfort zone. But some people are very adventuresome. And so in that adventuresome place, Bhagavad Gita provides us the shelter of Krishna, because it's Krishna's words and Krishna's indication and so forth. So we're never alone. That's the comfort in that uncomfortable space. And so we're looking at Gita values. That's way over there on the right side, and most likely we're not there yet. You know, we have something, but it's not as full as we would like. And so Krishna is our support. So now these Gita values, there are printed copies of this available at the end of the program for those that don't have it. Yes? There's 6 Gita values that we ended up the last week's session, and you know, the paragraph that follows them. The selection of those 6 and the little paragraph comes from Oxford University Department of Vaishnava Studies. You can get a 4-year degree at Oxford University studying Vaishnava studies, and this is, Gita is one of the things they teach. Anyway, so this is number 1 on their list, and it's very logical, they're sequential, and so we're going to discuss this value. So again, to repeat, don't hear just see if you can capture the information, get an A in the exam at the end. That's not what we're doing tonight. It's try to hear with where we are and where we want to go, and what do we need to do to get to where we want to go. And there may be a big gap, and that's okay. What do we need to do to get to where we want to go? So it's a value, equal vision. There's lots of unequal things. There's varieties of vegetables. It's an interesting tree that has so many different fruits. Insects, birds, aquatics, animals and more animals. In the world that we live, there's many, many, many differences. And amongst the human society, culture, race, color, language, attire, nations, so many differences. We can keep going. It's easy to point out differences. How people respond to different situations is very, very different. The same person can respond differently to the same situation at different times. There's the place where we are is many differences. Different life forms, different people, different situations, different exchanges. Now our topic is equal vision. How are we supposed to see with equal vision? Easier said than done. So Bhagavad Gita has a key to the answer to that question. The graphics were done by somebody besides me, but I like the graphics, so I'll point out, down here is a key, and up there's a lock. And it's really good if you want to open the lock to have a key. And that lock is in the shape of a heart. So if you want to open your heart, you need the key for this equal vision. And Gita teaches this equality of all living beings is where life is respected, regardless of what's on the outside. So what's that life that's to be respected? Here's another image with different species, an evolutionary picture. So what's the sameness? What's the commonality amongst all living beings and different species and differences? Gita teaches us it's the eternal soul. The souls are unchanging. Here's a soul here inside the human. Here's a soul inside the gorilla, and a soul inside each one of those forms of life. And look at all those souls all over the place in the air, because in the air there's living entities. So what does Gita tell us about the unchanging spiritual energy or the spark of life that's within? Well, another image on the right, this is a BBT painting, from lower species to higher species, even in the realm of the demigods. There's spirit souls, and the nature of that spirit soul, that little skinny guy, that's us, or that's the spirit soul. We are eternal and cognizant and blissful. Satchitananda. That's the soul. By its makeup. That's who we are. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. It's a cute photograph, but it says it very nicely. There's differences lined up there, but there's some sameness also. And that's who we are. We're the spark of life inside. So now we're going to do a little exercise. There's 2 sessions. I'm going to stand in front of the screen so you can't see it. We're going to do it. There's 2 parts of this that are interactive. And this one requires your participation, interactive participation, and the other one does too. So, you ready to participate? So, I'm going to ask you, some of you do yoga. How many do yoga? Okay. Some of you know what pranayama is, right? You all know what pranayama is. The kids, do you know what pranayama is? Kid in the red shirt. You don't know what prana means life air, and pranayama means practicing controlling the life air because it makes the mind very calm. You heard of that before? Yeah, okay. So we're going to do a little mini pranayama. And it requires, it's meant to bring your nervous system to a relaxed, meditative state. So, sit comfortably, sit straight, but also comfortably, and I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. One more. Deep breath. Inhale. Exhale. Now, using your inner sense, the mind, keep your eyes closed. I'm going to ask you to stay in this meditative place. Feel, bring your attention to your feet. You can wiggle your toes or whatever you like. Feel your feet. And then your lower legs. And then moving up your thighs. Bring your mind to that place, part of your body. Then to your waist. And then moving up to your stomach area, your abdomen area. And then to the lower back. And then keep moving up and move your attention to your shoulders. Move your shoulders a little bit. It's just your attention is going there. Your arms, your neck, and then your head and the top of your head. And you just experienced your body. But Gita tells us we're not the body. And Gita tells us we're also not the mind. The mind is that instrument that you've been contemplating those parts of the body, but you're not the mind. Continue in this meditative space. And then there's the thoughts in the mind. And you're not the thoughts in your mind. You're not the feelings connected with the thoughts in your mind.
Turn these front leg out.
Whatever you want to do. So now, one more. In your meditative state, let's take another 2 deep breaths, because we're going to go a little further. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Deep. Exhale. And now we're going to go inside the heart, because that's where the soul is situated, in the region of the heart, not the physical heart, but in that region. And that's who you are. You're that conscious entity, that spark of life, the spirit soul, that's within the region of the heart. And that spark of life that's within the region of the heart is connected to the super soul, who is side by side with the individual soul within the heart. And that's our spiritual reality. Okay, that little exercise is now completed. Thank you. The soul is what animates the body. When the soul departs the body, everything disintegrates. The presence of the soul integrates and animates and gives life to what the body, when it looks like it's alive. The body is not alive, it's the soul that's alive, animating the body. And do you know how big the soul is? That it's in the region of the heart? According to the Upanishads, Svetashvatara Upanishad, if you take the tip of a hair and divide the tip of a hair into 100 parts, take one of those 100 parts and divide that into another 100 parts, that's the size of the soul. That's pretty small. It's subatomic. Smaller than the atom, the spirit soul powers the elephant, as well as the squirrel and even a germ, little microbial germ. The soul is very tiny. But very powerful. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, teaches the living entity, that's the soul, thus taking another gross body after leaving this one, obtains a certain type of ear and eye and tongue and nose and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects, or tries to enjoy. And then the human form has all 5 senses more developed and seeking happiness and pleasure in sense objects through those senses. And so as long as one is seeking happiness outside, the soul inside is not going to feel happiness, the contentment, the tranquility. So the Samadarshana, or the equal vision message is, we're all equal. I mean, bodily, we're different. Our natures are different. There's differences and differences, and we listed differences. But at the core of our being, there's a sameness. And according to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, you see the reference here below, that consciousness of who we really are is covered in different degrees. And it gives three different degrees. One is compared to an embryo covered by the womb. So within the womb of a mother, there's a living entity, and consciousness is covered in that embryonic state. And it's compared to a tree that also is alive and conscious but very covered. Or compared to a mirror that's covered by dust. So when consciousness becomes more evolved from a tree form, it comes to an animal form, and it's less covered than a tree, but still covered, like a mirror covered by dust. And when the human form of life is attained by evolutionary process, then we come to this stage where consciousness is compared to fire covered by smoke. But there's fire that's not with smoke. That's a very special kind of fire. That's when consciousness is not covered at all. That's pure consciousness. And Bhagavad Gita is the instruction of Bhagavad Gita is to take us, the reader of Bhagavad Gita, reader of Krishna's message, to the place where we have consciousness that's not any longer covered. That's the value of Bhagavad Gita. And to see other living entities in that same way, not only ourselves. Here's the verse, it's from chapter 5. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision. Sages see with equal vision. Samadarshana is the phrase. A learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and that fellow we wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley in Jersey City. So there's obviously differences. The nomenclature says there are differences, and the forms are differences, but the humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision. There's a sameness within each entity, resting upon that spark of life, the spirit soul. So when one learns that vision or acquires that quality, this vision awards personhood to all, links everyone with the divine grace, and consequently with each other. Equal vision begins with seeing ourselves, who we are, what we are, and seeing other living entities, who they are. And then we can have spiritual relationships soul to soul, well, we're still dealing with the fact that the covering is different. Cultures are different, genders are different, colors are different, language is different. So now this is, the last time I made this presentation was at Illinois Institute of Technology, IIT. And at the end there was a sharing session, and 3 people in the group said this was the most meaningful part of the whole presentation, what we're doing right now. So please take it seriously. Consider, what are some challenging situations where you feel personally you just cannot see different people, certain people, with equal vision. Think of one person in your life with whom you have difficulty. Not too many. One person, difficulty, now or in the past. And we meant to ask you to bring some paper or pad, but everybody has a handheld device. You can pull them out now, it's okay. And write it down in your little handheld device, because when you write something down, there has to be more clarity than just kind of a thought that's bouncing around. So, literally, take some time, 3-4 minutes. One person, presently or in the past, and there's a specific incident that you had difficulty seeing that person with spiritual vision. And then we're going to ask you after doing that to take a look at the situation differently. But so let's do this much right now. If you have paper, you can write it down on paper. Please take the time to write it down. The sign I can move on is when people look up. So if you're looking down, that means I'll still pause a bit. Try to finish up. Okay. Now comes the next part of this exercise. Going into that same inner vision space that we went to before, consciously try to see that other person, not necessarily the situation, but the other person as a spirit soul. Even if their behavior wasn't so nice. See the person as a spirit soul. And stay with that, they're a spirit soul contemplation. I mean, the exercise says, have a soft kirtan for 10 minutes while you're meditating the other person is spirit soul. But for sake of time, we're not going to do that. But if you, as much as you're able to see them as spirit soul, how does it change your regard for the person? Not the behavior, but the person. That's our last slide. So we're going to go back to this image of the iceberg and connect that samadarshan of value with the iceberg of culture. So there's a value, there's deeply held implicit convictions, and Bhagavad Gita is trying to help us understand the real entity is the spirit, soul, the spark of life, and if we hold the value of being, let's say, forgiving, and even more importantly, seeing the other person as a spirit soul, being the foundation and basis for us to be forgiving, not like you have to embrace the bad behavior or whatever it was, but the soul. And when you regard another according to who they really are, then you're living consistent with your values, spiritual values. Just like I mentioned, this is a gymnasium in a school. I was just curious to see how they're putting up signs for the kids, and they're stating values, and I wonder how consistent their stated values are met by the kids. If they don't have an understanding that they're a spirit soul and the other kid is a spirit soul. You know, don't hit, don't spit, don't kick. I mean, that's their signs. And, you know, be kind. So, in one sense, we're fortunate in terms of our birth, and it wasn't, you know, some of the births that are here in Jersey City. But for us to come to this higher position that Bhagavad Gita is teaching, everything is supported by a spiritual conception, and then we can live consistent with the values that are consistent with that reality, and our behaviors can also. So there's this alignment principle, and alignment is driven foundationally by a spiritual principle. And if you say it negatively, and then we'll say it positively, if you can't get that spiritual principle straight, you're not going to make very much progress spiritually. And even in terms of ethics and good conduct, you know, the tip of the iceberg, there won't be much transformation. There may be some behavior modification, but not transformation. And then the further spiritual values, if you look at this list when you take a copy when you go home, the next one is, how you have interactions with others. Compassion. Compassion isn't just a behavior, it's a regard that you have for another, and not just the difficulty they're passing through, but this bottom of the iceberg. So I'm emphasizing this purposefully, and this particular first value as the presentation is also by design is short, but it's very important. It's the foundation for all of the other values and all the other wisdom that comes from Bhagavad Gita. Without it, we won't go much further in our lives. Arjuna has this main question, what's my duty? Right? He's bewildered. We sometimes get bewildered. And before Krishna starts speaking about duty, he says, well, before we speak about duty, let's talk about who you are. Who are you? Anyway, or who are you really? Because if you don't know who you are, how are you going to have clarity what your duties are? It's foundational. One of my favorite stories these days, I'll say it and they're going to end. And I think then we can turn the lights on because I'm in with the slides here. Longer story made short. I met somebody in China, a middle-aged lady that wanted to know from me what her purpose of life is. It's a long story, but she's a very successful person and shared with me from when I was a little girl, I knew that there's a mission in my life and I still don't know what my mission in life is. And she showed the transition. She thought it was this and that and the other thing and the other thing. And she hasn't found her mission in life. Those were not her words, but that's what she was saying. Mission in life is what she was saying. So I said, she wanted to know from me what's next. Where do I go from here? I said, you've achieved this, you've achieved that, and you've achieved the other thing, but it's really clear that you don't know who you are. So before you go to your mission, you have to know who you are. And this staff member of yours, it was a yoga studio owner, she's very studied in Bhagavad Gita. Learn Bhagavad Gita from her in Chinese, and you'll find out who you are. And then there's more things after that. But that's a starting point. So it's a starting point of the Gita's value. To have regard for others where we have equal vision. Equal vision doesn't mean you can't see differences. Equal vision means you see the differences at the same time you see what's supporting those differences, the animating force of life. And you see other individuals according to that, along with the differences. Spiritual intelligence, along with the other kind. Okay. So do the lights? Sorry about the sound, the fan, whatever it is, it's part of, we can't shut it off for some reason. So, learn to tolerate. Any discussion or comments you'd like to make?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hi.
Thank you for your insights, and I have some reflections that I would like to share. We spoke about liminal space and how each one of us have been exposed to different cultures. And all of us coming from different backgrounds, we carry a lot of past conditioning and baggage. So considering all of that, how can we be spiritually intelligent and develop that quotient?
How can we do what?
How can we be spiritually intelligent and maintain that quotient?
Maintain which?
A quotient, like a emotional quotient and then intelligence.
Emotional balance?
A quotient, I mean that's,
Quotient?
yeah.
I'm not familiar with that.
So it's something like it's like a metric.
Understand what emotional quotient means? It's part of the question.
It's like how can we know So how can we know about where our spiritual intelligence is?
Where is it?
Yeah, where is it? Because we carry a lot of past conditioning, and we spoke about cultural engineering and liminal space.
Well, where it is, I'm going to do without a microphone. Because where it is emanating from Super Soul. But what it is more important. Where it is, because we're Super Soul. But what it is, according to what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, spiritual intelligence or buddhi is that which takes you to Him. But how to guide everything. Your education, your career, your relationships, your everything. What you eat, how you live your life. In such a way that it brings you to Krishna. That's spiritual. That's what it is. And where it is resting in Super Soul, and He gives it to some. How can we get it? How can we get spiritual intelligence? We get it if Krishna gives it. And you can look at Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text number 10. There's the answer to whom Krishna gives it. Kesham satata yuktanam vajatam priti korvakam vedami buddhiyogakam. Vedami, He gives to those who have that prior mentioned qualification. Satata yuktanam vajatam priti korvakam. They're completely involved in loving dealing with Krishna. And they want to serve Him. Oh, they really want to be with me. I'll give them the intelligence. How they can do it. And if that's not, then He doesn't impose that on people. They want the other kind of intelligence. How to get objects over to the senses over here so I can get a buzz. I'll enjoy it. Material intelligence does that. And spiritual intelligence is how to get to Krishna. That's comes from Krishna when He sees that's what you want. The problem for me is that you can. Yeah, that's good. Because when she was speaking, the sound was going over there and I couldn't hear. I heard that you couldn't hear. You couldn't hear. So maybe I'll just stand over here. Her question was, where is this spiritual intelligence and how do you get it? Basically, because our lives are complex and there's lots of things going on and it's distracting those things, and how do you get spiritual intelligence to guide all those things? So my answer was,
It comes from Supersoul. Krishna says, chapter 10, text 10, he's situated in the heart, and when he sees Tesham, unto those who, Satata Yuktanam, always engaged, Bhajatam, in his service, Priti, with love, Purvakam, complete love, always, consistently. Unto those persons, Krishna gives Bodhi. And the nature of that Bodhi is how they can direct all those activities and all that diversity and variety and things that their lives are made up of in such a way they can come to him. It's like a spiritual GPS. You put in the destination, and that tells you where you are. Okay, you know how you get to your destination. So, spiritual intelligence is that. It's you navigate your way through the complexity of modern life, and it's quite okay. You don't have to go to the forest. You can stay here in Jersey City and have a job and do stuff that people do. But while doing so, how to not get distracted by those so many things and lose track of what the higher mission of human life is. That's spiritual intelligence. It keeps directing all the activities toward that higher mission. And that's the higher mission is awaken the fullest potential of our consciousness, and that fullest potential is being connected in loving service with Krishna, and to be there eternally. Okay. So you okay with that? You're not okay with that? You want to ask a further question? Okay, go ahead.
You spoke about spiritual GPS. So let's say everything like soul and heart and super soul, they are so close inside of us, but still we are not connected. Why is that?
Why are we not connected with Super Soul?
Despite the fact that super soul, soul, your heart, they are in the same space or region, but why are we still not so connected? And why are we...
Well, we're not connected because we don't want to be connected.
Why?
It's a big mistake. There's no good reason why. Misuse of free will is the reason why. In Bhagavad Gita, Raga Dvesha Samutena Dvandva Mohena Bharata. Krishna, what's the text number? Look it up. Raga Dvesha Samutena. So Krishna says, all living entities take birth in this material world, overcome by the duality, Dvandva Mohena Bharata. They become bewildered by the duality of Raga and Dvesha. Raga is, I want to sit on the throne. Why, it's always him. Dvesha, I can't sit on the throne because somebody else is on the throne. The king, the enviousness of, tell her. So that's why we're here, because of that, this duality thing. The seed of this duality thing is Raga and Dvesha towards Krishna. Dvesha is not nice. It's envy. Raga is I want. I want to be the enjoyer. I want to be at the center, but that's the problem. Somebody else is already there. So here we are, in this world of illusion, where we think that we're at the center. It's all about me. When it's not all about me. I'm not the center, the source of everything. There is one. So why? Because we're covered by illusion. You want to get free from illusion? Read Bhagavad Gita and follow what it says.
You spoke about misuse of free will. So let's say all of us have free will.
Yes.
And then we are also given different choices in life.
Yes.
So where does that intelligence come into play? Because
Well,
we have that will and choice.
It depends on who you're listening to. Because we're tiny, and in our tininess we're influenced by modes of nature. There's the mode of goodness influence, there's the mode of passion influence, the mode of ignorance influence, and there's where there's no influence of the modes of nature. That's transcendental influence, and that's where we're influenced by the message of Krishna. So the goal of yoga is to link with that source of everything, Krishna. That's what yoga is, whatever the type of yoga it is. So that's the whole of Bhagavad Gita, yoga systems to connect with who we really are. That's just the beginning. Then how do we fit in with everything else? And who are all these other entities besides me? They're parts and parcel of that same source. So as consciousness evolves through the yoga system, connecting with the source of everything, those things become known. Not just theoretically, information-wise, but it becomes part of your consciousness. It's part of higher consciousness. So, now what's the next one?
We did this exercise of identifying a person, that incident, and how that incident about that person made you feel at that time. So I have something, but I cannot let go of it because of that person, and that person is the cause of that.
Whoa. The other person isn't preventing you from letting go.
Huh?
The other person, you hold the key to the jail cell, not the other person. If you think the other person is holding the key to the jail cell, then you're going to stay in jail. But the other person isn't holding the key. As long as you're seeing them not as who they are, the spirit soul identity, then that misconception of who they are helps keep you in the misconception of who you are, and you're not in a position of freedom. You're in a position of bondage, and you have the key. You're the jail keeper, and you're in jail. You put yourself in jail. You don't have to be in jail.
So I have the choice of getting out?
Yes. But it's not just like, okay, I'm out. It's have to connect with that place of higher consciousness.
Yeah, I am connected, but I gave the key to that person.
You did what?
I have given the key to that person, but I am connected somewhere else.
Well, but you connect with Krishna. The mind is the place where those negative emotions are resting, and the negative emotion hurt. You don't have to live with the negative emotion. It's not even who you are. You can hold on to it, but you don't like to hold on to it, so you can let go of it.
Okay.
But it's not dependent upon somebody else to say it's okay, you can let go of it. You have to connect with this place of higher consciousness. That's who you really are. And then there's freedom. It doesn't mean, the bad person wasn't bad and the hurt wasn't hurt, but you can let go of it and move on to a place of freedom. It's for all of us. It's not, whatever it is that you're dealing with, you mentioned it last week, whatever it is, everyone has something. It's the nature of the place. That was what we discussed last week,
Yes.
Place of duality. And we all have it.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, you asked us to do the testing where we were supposed to think about someone who we had an issue with before, and then just do some kirtan for a while and then think again.
See them as spirits.
Yeah, see them as spirit souls. So I did that, and after a while, like after thinking about it, this was my answer to it. So I'll just read it and then ask the question. So my answer was, they're nothing but they're the soul, and neither are we. And but the soul too, so they're material. So they're material, whatever they did was material activities to our body, not to our soul. And it affects the mind, which is still part of the body, not the soul. Yeah? So it doesn't matter really. It shouldn't matter. Yeah? But what happens is, after doing a little bit of kirtan or whatever, and some spiritual activity, you can sit and think that, okay, you're not even the body, so it shouldn't matter, Yeah, and then it comes back again. So how do you deal with that? Like, it keeps coming back, you can think like that for a while right now, and then you'll go out again and again fall back into the same zone where you're thinking,
Your question is a classic, and it's real life, and a place where it's discussed. You can look it up later in your little handheld device that does all kinds of things. Devahuti, the mother of Lord Kapila Dev, asks him the same question. Slightly different, and is it really possible? And then so he says, yes, it's possible by the bhakti process, because by bhakti alone, the mind can be dissolved. The subtle body, first it gets diminished, but ultimately even dissolved. So you don't have to go back again. So it's one thing to go up, and then the bungee cord, the modes of nature pull one down. The impressions of the mind pull one down, and there you are again. So that's called anishtata bhakti. It's like a sine curve. So, but gradually, through bhakti, the amplitude of the sine curve diminishes, and the axis on which it moves starts to rise. So you stay higher. But it's part of the purification, because we didn't get contaminated quickly. It took some time. The purification takes some time. Mainly because we're attached, not because there's some weakness in the process. We're attached. We're not attached to suffering. We're attached to the sources of suffering. The contemplation of being the enjoyer. This question she was asking, how do we get here? How do we get in this covered, forgetful soul? We've made lots of free will choices like that for many lifetimes. So the course correction takes a while. So, but by the bhakti process, the answer is, you can look it up later. I think it's Canto 3, Chapter 25, verse 31 or something like that. To the 3:35, 31. I like the verse. Then it's gone. It's not like unsteady, up and down, but it's gone. It diminishes, and then it's gone. One can experience that over a period of time. Just stay with it over a period of time. Abhyasa, practice. I'm a fan of Jiva Goswami. He's one of our great acharyas. So he's explained that practice, he draws from Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Practice has 3 parts. Every day, over a sustained period of time, with faith. It's going to take you to a good place. And you can experience it little by little, incrementally, but you just stay with it. And you can confirm, yes. It's still... Anyone else? I'm surprised those of you that are here came here because of the weather. So my compliments to you for coming.
Thanks for the lecture, Guruji. I really enjoyed it and learnt a lot. So my question is based on the concept of equality, which was displayed in one of the slides, where all the different creatures are shown as equal, and a person who's standing outside looks at them as their souls, like a cow or a human or an elephant, dog eater. So there was another slide where the human soul was shown as a more evolved soul, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong, but in the line of other animals, the human being was in front of everything else. So yeah, so is there a sense of disparity here, or a kind of yeah, is there a problem with this kind of division that they think humans are better than other animals?
There's bodily differences and spiritual equality. They're not a one-to-one correlation. So in the process of evolution, it's not that matter is evolving like chemical evolution notion. It's that consciousness is evolving, or say it differently, same thing differently. In the lower forms of life, there's also consciousness, but more covered by guna and karma. It's like a prison sentence. And then after that life, in a lower life form, then the soul moves on to the next higher level of consciousness. So on the evolutionary scale, another life form where consciousness is more fully exhibited, and more fully exhibited, and more fully exhibited, and more fully exhibited. It's just an evolution of consciousness. That's why the human form is at that end. But the human form, if misuses the opportunity of human life, can go down to the lowest, or worse, to a hellish condition. So with that more evolved consciousness, there's greater responsibility. The law of karma say the same thing a different way. The law of karma doesn't apply to animals on down, because they don't have evolved consciousness, and thus they don't have the opportunity to generate karma, good or bad. They're just living out the previous karma. And then comes the human form with more evolved consciousness. So with that facility comes more responsibility, means karma. So there's good, you can go higher. Or there's bad, you can go lower. Or there's mixed, you can stay here. So that's why it's not disparity, it's just a more evolved state of consciousness. But the spirit spark inside, qualitatively, is the same. It's okay? You sure? You want to say something more? I could tell.
So I was just thinking that karma is so subjective, like this. Yeah, a good deed for someone might be a bad deed for someone else. It's, for example, the dishes we eat, maybe, like few people treat some dishes as, if you share the same dish, then few people treat it as good karma while others treat it as bad karma. As in, if you are eating a living being, or if you are eating a higher sense of life, or whatever.
Well, I'm sorry, but the laws of nature are not subjective. Laws of nature are not subjective. Human law is very subjective. Laws of nature are not subjective. Someone may think this is, in a subjective way. That doesn't mean the law of nature is subjective. How do you find what? Well, the modes of nature. That's how you evaluate. And what the modes of nature are described in Bhagavad Gita, but the modes of nature, they're Maya Dyakshena Prakriti. Supersoul oversees the modes of nature, oversees Prakriti, which are ruled by the modes of nature. So here's the three modes of nature. There's this nice image of a puppeteer. One is wearing yellow, another is wearing red, another is wearing blue. Goodness, passion, ignorance. And above those modes of nature, there's a supersoul overseeing. And so today, I may be doing something in the mode of passion. That's generating passion karma. And it's going to come back. It's a law of nature. Is it possible to get free from the modes of nature? Yes. How is that? By connecting with the source of everything, by connecting with Supersoul, connecting with Krishna. And then the influence of the modes of nature subside, and one becomes gradually, progressively situated in transcendence. So a little bit like his question. As you become connected further by practice with transcendence, the influence of the modes of nature subside. But the law doesn't change. I'm still, if I'm practicing some spiritual activity and I harm another living being, intentionally or unintentionally, intentionally is more culpable. There's karma, more culpable karma for intentional harm than unintentional harm. But it's a law of karma. I'm not, so therefore I should keep myself as far as possible in transcendental consciousness and refrain from activities in the mode of ignorance. Yesham tvantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta bhajante man vritha vrata. Nice Bhagavad Gita verse. Bhajante mam, one engages in devotional service, dridha vrata, with great determination. So supposing I have this really strong tendency to be an alcoholic. Supposing. I don't. And I never did. But supposing I know some people that have that tendency. So that's going to make their chanting more distracted, because that mode of ignorance impelling force in their life is very strong. But so what does that person do? They refrain from the mode of ignorance activity and engage in chanting, and gradually that tendency, antakarana is the Sanskrit phrase, it just subsides. That subtle force within, by connecting with transcendence. That's how the message of Bhagavad Gita works, how the yoga system works. And then in that higher consciousness place, I can see other living entities as spiritual beings, like his question over here. And stay there by higher consciousness. That is, the modes of nature influence subsides. Now it's a nice sounding message, but it's also something that one can directly experience. Pratyaksha avagamam dharnyam. Krishna says, this knowledge, you can directly perceive it. You can directly perceive the self. You can directly perceive the self. But it's gradual, because now my consciousness is blurred, or like her question, I have these attachments to the temporary, so I'm not connecting so well. younger devotees, it's really hard sitting through all this, right? Anything else? We're done. Okay, so, oh, you have something?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You initially, in the initial part of the lecture, you mentioned about a struggle that we have to go through before we get to the next phase or next level.
Struggle that you have to go through before you get where?
The next level. As we progress, there are struggles and then we have to work through it.
Yes.
So there are these, we know there are, okay, this is suffering and this is struggle. There are certain things that, some pain that we go through, we know that this is some kind of temporary suffering. And then sometimes we know, oh, this is the struggle. I'm able to identify. I'm able to differentiate between suffering and struggle.
Okay.
And there are times when I don't know if it is a struggle or suffering. How do I get that understanding?
I don't exactly understand why it's important that you make that distinction between struggle and suffering. I don't understand why it's important to even distinguish between the two. Why is it important to distinguish between the two? Between struggle and suffering. Suffering is as temporary and struggling is as ongoing? Is that what you're meaning?
I don't know, maybe because I consider that as suffering because I don't see that taking me anywhere. Whereas when I see if it is struggle and I know that, I have to go through this to get to the next, I'm accepting.
Well, this connects with her question, like, spiritual intelligence. Spiritual intelligence tells you you're going somewhere. So, I think I understand the distinction you're making. That is, struggle is going to take me somewhere out of wherever I am, and suffering is I just have to endure it because it's going to pass anyways, and it has nothing to do with my ultimate or higher aim. So, when you find yourself in that uncertainty place, focus more on your connection with Krishna, the ultimate, the highest destination, or at least higher destination of my life's mission is to connect with my source, connect with Krishna as completely fully as I can. And I'm not there yet, but I want to move in that direction. And if you're aspiring like that, and you just stay in that aspiration mood, I think you'll find the answer to your question. That is, spiritual intelligence will be supplied. You have something more? Yeah, he did.
We generally hear, when I hear that, hey, I'm going through something, I need to fix myself, people just throw a blanket statement saying life is like this, life is a struggle. So how do I tell my mind like this other person is just throwing a blanket statement, but I am dealing with it?
You smile. That's how you deal with it. Yeah, I mean, by smile means you have your relationship with Krishna, and that's everything. And here's this nice person, whatever they're trying to be helpful or trying to poke fun or whatever, whatever the thing is. And I want to go to Krishna, and that's the smile. And some other persons are sent by Krishna. This is a Mother Teresa statement. Some people are sent your way, and it's some act of kindness comes from this other person, and some persons are sent to you just to teach you a lesson. This is her statement. So okay, you smile. They're coming to teach me. Thank you. And I'm not investing so much in that sound vibration from that other person, because I'm fixed on my mission. And using his language of, dealing with something that's going to take me to a better place, it sounds from the exchanges we've had, you feel you're going to a better place, you want to keep going to the better place, and here's an individual who's not going to be a resource to help me get to the other place. That's okay. I'm going to go to where I need to go to. I'm going to go to my connection with the source of everything. Thank you. No, no worries, no hurt, no pain, no loss. And if you remain very fixed and poised like that, not like cold, but fixed and poised and happy, this other person and other persons are going to go, what's with her? She's got something going on inside her that's like, I want to find out about it. And you would say, I'm learning. I'm not there yet, but this is what I'm learning. And then you have relationships where you're an instrument to help people remember Krishna too, to your capacity. And your capacity can be really tiny because you're struggling. But you can still be, remind them of Krishna when they forgot Krishna. If they want. And if they don't, that's okay too. That's the smile. Okay? Okay, I think we're ready for the next thing. Prasadam, right?
Hare Krishna. So, once again, thank you for coming. Maharaj, for giving us a little bit more of your time before you start on your next journey.